Hey, this is Matt, and before we get started with this episode, I wanted to let you know about Access.org. We talk a lot about this group in this episode using one of their resources, because today we're talking about when is my teen ready to date? And we used an article that they had written, and we only used a very, very small portion of it, and it's a great article, a great read that we wanted to put in your hands, and they graciously allowed us to give this information to you and connect to this article for you. But you really need to check out Access.org. They have great resources connecting parents and students on a variety of topics, searchable and free resources, many free resources for you to be able to point your teens towards Christ and your hearts back towards each other. So check out Access.org, and here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, Father. Hey, son. Making a podcast sure sounds fun. Set up the mics, grab a cup of Joe, and let's see how it goes.
Welcome to We Were Thinking. I'm Matt. I'm here with Steve, my dad, and today we were thinking about our teenagers and dating. A lot of times the question comes up all the time in youth ministry circles. You got parents that are trying to navigate the pressures of our culture. And me personally, I have 2 teenagers in my house, young teenagers who are getting to that stage of, or will get to that stage soon of, dating and all that. Right now, they're not interested in that as of this recording too much, and so I'm blessed for that. At least that stress. And I know a lot of times parents, they say, well, when can they date? Well, they've got to be 30 and not living in any state that I'm in, so I cannot know about this. And it becomes a topic that we as parents of teenagers would rather sweep under the rug and hope that our precious little darlings never get to that stage. But if we get to when they get to that stage and we haven't prepared them, now we're in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, it's funny. I've lived long enough now, Matt, where that I can remember back in the day when it was almost an automatic at a certain date. Okay, when you turn 16, you can start dating, and I'm not sure why it was 16. Maybe that's because it's about the time you're a sophomore in high school or whatever. But I've known some students over the years that the last thing they need to do is start dating at age 16. They probably needed to start dating, when they were 20 instead of 16. So I don't think there's an automatic date, but culturally things have shifted and changed so much anymore that I think we really got to be careful about just setting a date or a time or a certain age. And parents are so afraid that they're going to do the wrong thing that sometimes what we do as parents is that we swing the pendulum too far one way and we become so lackadaisical on that subject. We don't even give them any barriers. We say, okay, well, if you want to date, that's fine, whatever. And that could be a dangerous thing, because if you release them to do dating too soon, then you're going to have a problem on that end. But also on the other side of it, if you hold back and go, no, you're not going to do that here, students being students are going to figure out a way to get around that authority, because that's what we all do as teenagers. So we're trying to hit that stride and do it all at the right time. And I can tell you that there's a lot of information out there about a lot of different things when it comes to dating. And the question that we have to deal with or try to help our parents is, what are you supposed to do in a situation like that? I mean, let's face it, we're trying to raise our kids to really leave home at the right time, at the right maturity level, being able to be responsible. I, as an individual that's running into the Social Security system, I want you to do well, and I want you to pay into the system as a fully mature individual and have a good job someday and keep me on the government dole, so to speak.
That's right.
But the reality of it is we want our kids to grow up, but we also don't want them to be hurt or damaged or anything like that along the wayside. And I can tell you there's a lot of good materials out there. As a youth pastor over the years, I've learned to garner a lot of different things that are out there. But one of the guides that I've subscribed to for a long time is from a company named Axis, AXIS, and they have a lot of great materials that are very current. And one of the ones that they put out, a year or so ago, and it was called A Parent's Guide to Teen Dating. I highly recommend them. They do not They do not pay me to say that. They do not sponsor our podcast. It's just something that's worked for me. My goal is at this stage of my career in ministry, as I reach the retirement years and all those things, is the things that I've discovered and the things that I've been able to work through. I want to help somebody else so they don't have to go back through the exact same things. And how can you get this information out? So one of the pages on from this particular site and newsletter they sent out has 4 or 5 different questions. And not to plagiarize or anything, but I just think it works really well for them to be talking points for us. And you as a dad, as a parent, I think it really speaks truth into you. So you read the question, and let's kind of talk about it from there.
Yeah, and as we get into this, one of the things that they talk about, they've got a couple of great articles that they go to and a couple of books. And one of the things is we got to remember that we got to start with an age approach. Like you were saying, it can't be just, carte blanche, you're 16, all right, you can date. And maybe that comes from, hey, you can drive or whatever. But we also got to remember, we think, the kids are growing up faster today, but are they really? Emotionally, they may not be. There's some statistics that are suggesting that adolescence goes all the way to 30 now. And so 16 isn't what 16 used to be, right? And so, but anyway, yeah. So let's get into a couple of these questions. And the first one that we have here that they put into this guide is, does my child have the emotional maturity to experience rejection or a breakup?
Okay, so here's how I want to start with that. If you have a child and your child's at home, and every time you play a game, every time you play a board game, and I know, Matt, you and your family play games, and we play games and stuff, and you have different age levels, and we're in different mission trips events, or I'm at camp with a lot of kids and students, and we play a game, and if I have a student that every time they lose, they get angry, they get mad, they get frustrated, they beat the table, they yell, they scream. I would say to the parent of that particular child, they're not ready.
Yeah. And you can even, you're exactly right. It's like a kind of a window into the personality and the maturity level. Same thing. I think a really good one is looking at video games. If your son especially, or if your son is really into video games, and you're walking past the room where he's playing, and he's got his headphones on, and he is yelling at his friends, or he is frustrated and he's screaming about how the computer cheats and blah blah blah, and he's rage quitting every 5 minutes, and he can't finish a game. That's a pretty good indication that we're emotionally not quite ready for rejection.
Yeah, and it also means on looking at how they handle friendships. I know that everybody gets along. They never have any fallouts. Guys and girls, they handle those things differently. Some will hold grudges until they're 75 over something in middle school. But how do you handle that breakup of a friendship or disagreement with someone? If it really bothers you for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, or a month, or I don't like them, or I will get even with them, I would say they're not ready to start dating yet, because let's face it, when you're 15 and 16, and if you're listening to this podcast and you're 15 or 16, here's going to be a truth alert for you. Whomever you start dating with at age 15 or 16, the numbers are against you that's going to be your future spouse.
Yes. You hear all these stories about, we were high school sweethearts, I never dated anybody else. Statistically speaking, that doesn't always happen. In fact, it's rare.
Very rare. And even when they do marry, then somewhere along the way in the future, there's that little doubt for one of them. And I've talked to a lot of these couples, and a lot of them will say, oh, no, that never happened to us. Okay, that gets even more and more rare of, I never dated anybody else. It's the only person I've ever been with. Nothing which is wrong, but sometimes it causes a little bit of concern, because maybe there was somebody else out there. And not that there was. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I think you have to be careful.
And it also, you have to be it can be very dangerous, because some people subscribe to, God has created one person for me. And then you start going, did I miss that person? God didn't create just one person for you. Here's the cool thing about God's sovereign grace. God knows all. So
that was one thing that you helped me with, not talking about dating, but I used to have this crippling anxiety about making decisions, especially big decisions. And I can remember when I was trying to figure out between colleges, and I was trying to decide, should I go to this college? This college is a state college, and I could get in-state tuition, and it's going to be much cheaper. This is a private school. It's going to be much more expensive. What do I need to do? What if I make the wrong decision? And you pulled me aside one day, and you said, I want you to think about this. Do you think that if you choose one college over another, that God's going to go, oh no, now what do I do? He's messed up my plan. And that was a very freeing conversation for me, because I realized that God's a big boy, and he is far more concerned with the end result and of where my heart is and how I follow after him. If I miss a quote unquote miss a sign from him, that's okay. God's in control. So all that to say, if you're in a relationship where you never dated anybody else, it's the only single person, and those doubts start to creep in, maybe I didn't get the one person God had set aside for me. Completely get that out of your mind, because that is a falsehood, and that is the enemy trying to destroy the relationship you already have.
Yeah, so, and talking about this rejection and this breakup thing, I have seen a lot of teenagers over the years, and I'm not talking about just teenagers in general. I'm talking about some solid believers in Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior, and they have got into a relationship with someone. They dated for a good while, and a breakup does happen. And it really does cause one of them, the one usually that doesn't do the breaking up, but the other person broke up with them, it causes them sometimes to go into a tailspin. What's wrong with me? Why would you not want to spend time with me? And then they sense this sense of rejection, and then although their identity was not in that other person or in that dating relationship, all of a sudden they struggle with their identity. That's where we get into anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all those things. And let me just preface that by saying this. That's not just a girls thing. For some reason, we think that some of these issues are always for girls. That's not true. I know a lot of guys that struggle with the exact same things when a young lady says, no, you're not the guy for me. So what we're trying to help parents to do is, I want you to start thinking about your child where they are. If you have a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, whatever the case be, they're young teens, and you're going to start looking at that. When is going to be the right time? Should they date? And if so, at what age? So I think that we have to look at, can they handle a breakup? Can they handle rejection? Those are very emotional things, and that's hard for adults. So if adults struggle with it, guarantee you some teenagers are going to struggle with it.
That's exactly right. So that's question number one. Does my child have the emotional maturity to experience rejection or breakup? The second question is, does my child possess the ability to communicate well enough to be in a relationship with others? Coming into that communication aspect. Because when it comes to relationships, if you are not communicating, it is not a relationship.
It's not. And let me go back old school for just a second. And this is, Matt, you may not be aware of all this. So this is even before you were born, before I was married, I started dating your mom. And back in the day, prior to cell phones, yes, students, we did have phones, but they called it long distance, and we had to talk, and it cost us lots of money, of which we didn't have. Your mom and I lived 30 miles apart. We had met in college, junior college, and had this dating relationship, but I had to work second shift. I went to school during the day, so I didn't really spend much time with her. We really only dated Saturday and Sunday, because I was off on Saturday and Sunday. The church that we attended was 30 miles from my home, because I lived in another town. One of the things that we decided to do when we started dating, and it wasn't an engagement or anything. We just dated each other exclusively because we tried to get to know each other. One of the things we said to each other, if we hear something, if somebody said, I said this, or she did that, or she said this, or everything, the first thing we've got to do is to listen to each other and communicate. Because if we didn't, then we're going to take whatever was said and run with it at face value, and the relationship that we would have would be totally ruined. So we made sure that we sat down and talked and said, what are you hearing? What's going on? Because if we didn't, we would have lost it. Lost the relationship. We didn't have text messages, didn't have any of the modern technologies you have today, but we did have to have trust, and we did have to have communication with each other. And let me say this about communication. I think you've heard me say this before. There is a big difference in talking to someone and talking at someone.
Big difference, yes.
And I want to make sure that I talk to her, and when she's talking back to me, and talking at somebody's accusational and talking down, and it's basically on the borderline of arguing. So I want to make sure that in this communication thing that we actually communicate. When it comes to students, communication is not a text message.
No.
Communication is not, hey, look at this reel that I just saw, or whatever, or this meme. That's funny, that's cute. But what we're talking about in communication, or what I like to talk about in communication, is we really want you to get down into that thing where that they have enough communication skills where they can actually talk about relational matters. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What is it that is your favorite thing? Those are small things, but you got to talk about them.
And then you have to get to the point you could start at that surface level, and once you get past that, then you start getting into future. And not necessarily with them, but these are some things I have in my future, how I envision my future. Do you want to someday have children or not have children? Because those are very important things. Because if you you and Mom, when you guys were even dating, were talking about, here's how I want to raise my children. These are some values that I have, so that when, hey, this is the person I want to marry, and yes, we do want to have children, you've already broken that ice. It's no longer an awkward conversation of when children come, if children come, oh, we're married now. I had no idea you felt that way, because you've already started those conversations. Maybe not necessarily deep, but having, like you said, interpersonal communication skills where they can hold on a conversation. Because if your conversation is only, hey, what's your favorite? Hey, what's your favorite? Hey, what did you ever see this? Did you ever do that? You're surface level, and that's not relational when it comes to a dating relationship.
Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of dates anymore are, let's go grab something to eat, let's go see a movie, let's go back to your house, play video games, or let's talk. Those are very surface things, because you didn't spend any time in communication. You're eating, and most of the time, let's be honest, a lot of people, when you're eating, you're sitting and talking with somebody else on your phone. It's the worst thing in the world to do on a date.
Or watching TV or whatever.
Yeah, so you're not getting to know each other, and you really got to spend some time getting to know each other in that communication. And if your child cannot communicate, they cannot express themselves, if they cannot carry on a good conversation, then you need to be aware of that. And it doesn't mean everybody needs to be a polished speaker. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think that you got to have a relationship where that you can actually communicate with somebody else. And if you've got someone who talks all the time and somebody who doesn't talk a lot all the time, that can be a difficult situation to have.
Right.
So
then you get that one-sided domination relationship.
So I want you to kind of think about that one, and I'll start off number 3. It says, what are my child's friendships like? How does this help me discern their readiness for dating? How do they treat their friends? I have seen some students over the years that treat their friends like garbage. I don't know why they do that, and it really bothers me, because as a youth pastor, I love all the students, and it's just where God has placed me in my ministry and in my heart for teens. And when I see a student who's taking all this junk from their friend just so they can have a friend, that's a dangerous situation for the student who's taken the junk, but it's also a dangerous situation for the one who's dishing it out. Because if they feel like they can treat other people like that, that's not going to work well in a dating relationship, because if you find another person just like them, as a person that is strong and kind of puts down all their friends as well, and they hang out with. Now, you put these two people together in a dating relationship because they're both very strong individuals. That could be a volatile situation, because nobody talks to me like that. And that can be a dangerous thing. So as a parent, I think you really got to watch how they handle their friends, how they enter in a relationship with each other. When they have certain friends around, how do they, as your child, do they change? Do they follow them? Do they listen to them?
Do they try to dominate?
And who's in charge here? And let's face it, I'll be honest, here we go. There are some of your children's friends that are probably not their friends and are probably toxic, and they shouldn't be friends anyway. I'll talk about that later on some other time. Make a note, because friendships just give us so much insight into who we are as individuals. But in a dating relationship for a parent, looking at your children of whether or not they're ready to date, I think you need to step back, watch the dynamics with their friends, how they interact, how they talk with each other. Is there a bullying situation going on? Is there somebody trying to always outdo somebody else? There's a lot of different things. Make it a 3D picture of your child when you're looking at this dating thing, because if they're doing that here in your home or in a public environment with other people around and they're toxic like that, or there's just something that's making you feel uncomfortable, when they're dating just one individual, that puts more pressure on it. And then all of a sudden you've got an out of control situation. So I think you have to be very careful as a parent looking at how do they even deal with these relationships that they have.
But that's a great question, because I never really thought about that myself, that how my kids interact with their friends is a great indicator of how they're going to interact in a dating relationship. That's a really, really neat insight. The fourth question of our 5 here is, what areas do they need to grow in order to handle the various kinds of experiences they could have in dating? In some of these areas, it could be, like we said, communication. It could be into, and some of that's even making eye contact, or responding when it comes to communication, responding with more than single word answers, or expounding upon, and even coming, teaching your children to say, okay, don't make the conversation all about you. If you realize, hey, you know what? I've been talking about myself a lot here. Ask a question about them to reflect it back. Otherwise, you're dominating the conversation. So that's maybe that's a communication skill that they need to learn. And there's other areas, of course, that you need to grow in.
Sure. And I think one of the ways to help you discover where they need to grow is, and parents, I know that you think this is crazy. That's okay. I'm all right with that. I think sometimes you role play this thing, or you write down and say, okay, and guys are different girls. I get this, because girls, good grief, when they're age 5, they already got their weddings planned. They know their dresses.
They're just filling in the slot.
I'm just waiting for the guy that's going to fit the tux. I've already got pre-ordered. But guys are like, what are you talking about? But when it comes to a dating relationship, I think when you can help your child is, okay, your mom and I dated. Here, this is me playing this out. Okay, your mom and I used to go on dates. There's some things we did. Some of the stuff we did, I can tell you, and you may be thinking, well, that was lame at best. That's okay. But the thing I'm looking for is, as I'm talking to my child, what would be the perfect date? For you, what would you say would be a perfect date? And you do this before they ever start dating. And if you start seeing certain things in there that they need to work on, and I'll just say it's a girl just because I'll be devil's advocate. He's going to come at the right time. He's going to be wearing this outfit. He's going to smell good because he's already, no axe. He's all cleaned up, ready to go. He's going to come to the door. He's going to be a gentleman. He will speak to my parents. He will open the door for me. We will go to a 5-star restaurant for dinner. He will pull my chair out for me. He's going to put the napkin in my lap. You're going to be sadly disappointed on this date.
And you could be waiting a long time for that.
Because he's thinking the perfect date is, hey, look, the minor league baseball team is in town, and I'd really like to go watch them. I'm going to buy you a hot dog, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks, and we're going to have a great time. And boy, you talk about a division of the worlds. The other thing I think that you can do, one, I think that gives you an idea into your children. The other thing is you need to help your children set boundaries. Yeah. In a sexually saturated world, visually, online, games, movies across the world, I think that we really need to learn or help our children learn how to set boundaries. What is appropriate? What's not appropriate? Let's just say it this way. You come home from the first date. It's an actual date. You're on the girl's front doorstep. Here's the question. Do you kiss them goodnight? Okay, now that's not a big deal, but that's a big deal. And if they've not thought through this, they've not had that process in their mind, they've never looked at it, I think you got a real problem there, and it can be a disaster for both of them. Now let's go a little bit further. How do we interact as we're going to and from the restaurant, to and from the whatever your date is? Do you hold hands? Do you not hold hands? If you do hold hands, is a hug appropriate? Where is touch out of bounds. You need to address this. Now, as parents, these are some hard conversations you got to have, but let me be honest with you, folks. It's a whole lot better to have this uncomfortable, upfront conversation than it is to have a broken child on the other side of their first or second date and something happened that they weren't prepared for because we never addressed it, we never talked about it. I'm not saying think about the worst case scenario and have an air tag on them where you can track them everywhere. You can do that with other apps in their phone. But what I am saying is I think that you do need to have that conversation with them so that they have realistic expectations, because if they don't have realistic expectations, then it's going to be a failure. Now that child could be hurt because they weren't ready for those sort of things. And then the long term is they don't want to go out and date again. And then you're looking at other issues that we're going to have to address later on.
Yeah, and I think that we could do an entire podcast on setting those boundaries and that question that everybody always asks is, how far is too far, right? And so we'll spend some time on questions of that nature, but you're exactly right. You have to set up boundaries. You have to set up things to protect your child. And it's not about being a prude of, no holding hands, no looking at, no eye contact. You cannot sit within 3 feet of each other, whatever. But at the same time, you cannot say, well, anything goes to a certain point, because, you're still you have to be very, very careful. And it's not about setting an awkward boundary the whole time so you can't enjoy your time together and get to know them, but it is setting yourself up for success emotionally should this pan out not to be the person that you're supposed to be with. You don't want to give so much of your emotional self to them that you can't take it back and now you're damaged goods for the future. And we can talk about that on another time. But the fifth and final question is my child a good judge of character? And I think this really goes back to friendships. I think this goes back to people they choose to hang out with. Also, it could even be people that you interact with as a family, family friends that you as a parent may know, this person we need to, they're friends, but, they're not going to be one that we say, hey, why don't you come over every night of the week or whatever. And you could see your children, a lot of times they'll pick up on that because they'll say, this person, is everything okay with them? Because they could pick up on that. And if that's a good sign, because, okay, yes, you're seeing what we are already aware of, that we're trying, as a parent, I may be trying to protect you from some aspects, or like a family member that chooses a lifestyle different than what you would like your children to have. Sometimes without telling them what's going on, they can pick up on that. And that's a good thing because they're showing themselves to be a good judge of character.
Yeah. And when they're starting to pick up on that on their own, that's a wonderful thing. And it doesn't mean that the other person is necessarily bad. It could be because sometimes personalities just rub each other the wrong way. And your child picks up on that on their own. That's a good sign because they're saying, I like them. They're good people and everything or whatever. But every time I'm around them, I don't feel this. I feel this. I always get in trouble or whatever. And I think that's a good sign for them because that shows that they're getting closer of being good character or good judgment of character. Mm-hmm. And as youth minister over the years, honestly, I have seen and heard so many stories. And one of my favorite ones, it just makes me laugh. Now, it may not make anybody else laugh and you may turn me off. That's okay. But we had a student one time who was telling about, it was a girl, happened to be a girl, and she'd met this guy. And all of a sudden you could see it in her countenance. The bluebirds were starting to sing. The sun was setting. It was absolutely beautiful. I was waiting for Snow White to start singing "One Day My Prince Will Come." Right. I mean, it was just all out there. So anyway, they get talking about this guy, and I don't even know I don't know who he was, but they're telling this story, and I'm just sitting interested because of my students, and they're just wonderful. They're witty. They're friendly. I love the way they dress, and they're always nice, and they're always complimenting me, and I just like to hang out with them. Now they're a Satan worshiper, but we have a great time together.
Insert record scratch. Wait a second. Go back to that last part.
Yeah, and it's they glazed that part over. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. What did you just? Because I'm thinking maybe I misunderstood. No, straight up,
Yeah.
Sixes and all that stuff. Said, no, they told me they were a Satan worshiper, but they're a really nice guy. and I thought, wait a second. as the youth pastor, can I bring in a few scripture here? Can I give you some ideas? I can see the train wreck to happen before it ever leaves the station.
Right.
Let's talk through that a little bit. But they weren't necessarily the best judge of character at that point. I'm not saying anything against the young man. Whether or not he was or he wasn't, it could have been for shock value. I don't know, because he had all the other values that somebody was looking at and looking for in a dating relationship. However, the footnote for me was, I don't think this is going to be a good fix for you. And just for the rest of the story, I don't think that those two people ever dated. I don't think they ever really hung out with each other, but there was just that conversation that has been ingrained in me for 25 years now of like, that was the craziest statement ever. But it gets to the point as a parent, does your child have the ability to have good judgment, good character judgment when they're talking to somebody about the possibility of liking them or going out with them or being in a relationship with them? If not, then they may not be ready to date. So basically, it's not just an age. It's not just a date. It's not when you turn 16 or 17 or after March the 3rd, after that. It's not automatic.
And then the key is conversation and relationship as the parent. Because you may go through these questions and say that I think they're ready, maybe not that one or whatever. And just because they may or may not be ready, now we got to get into okay, what do you notice about somebody? Are you only, and you're looking for these answers of, are they only looking for physical beauty? Are they looking past that? Are they looking into, like we say, judge of character? Are they looking past physical to, who they are? Because it could be, oh man, she's hot. Man, she's just gorgeous. She's great. Yeah, but like, do you enjoy being with her? I mean, yeah, it's fun and everything, but I mean, she's gorgeous. She's so pretty or whatever. Well, what about her walk with Jesus? I mean, she goes to church, but you should see when she wears this dress, okay. Well, hold up.
Pull back, Trigger. Come here.
I get your motivation. Trust me, I get your motivation, but we need to have conversations about substance, about longevity and all that kind of stuff.
And you're looking at the whole person, and not just the whole person, the persons that you're going to date as a student and when you're ready for that, but also you as an individual and your person. What is your identity? Your identity as a Christian student should be in Jesus Christ. That's where that's so important in your personal walk. Does that other person that I'm hoping to date or that I'm looking at dating or I'm hoping he will call me and we get to go out, will he enhance my relationship with Jesus? Because if I get into a dating relationship, I know we're talking about are they ready, but think about this. If you're in a dating relationship with someone and they do not enhance and increase your walk with Jesus, but they're dragging you down and causing you to go the other direction, may not be the best person for you to date until they get serious with their walk with Christ.
Right, because missional dating is a terrible idea.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. But he needs Jesus. Then share Jesus with him, but not as his girlfriend.
That's right. And walk through that on a different scope, whatever, but it does not lead to a dating relationship just so that you can lead them to Christ. Same way about marrying a non-believer and then hoping they come to Christ. That's going to be a disaster. I know it's worked out for other people, but the Scripture is very specific about some of those things. But to get back, what our point is today is, when is my child ready to date? These 5 things that we've been talking about today, as I said, it came from Axis. It's a great publication. I highly recommend it. You take a look at some of the things they have. But this particular one was, when is my teen ready for dating? And honestly, there's like 13 pages of notes on this particular thing. Matt and I have just pulled out 5 of their questions to go over with you today. And the reason why I wanted to do those 5, I thought it would be really a good starting point. We can go back and visit more of these later on, and they even have resources about some follow-up books and resources and things of that nature. And once again, they're not paying me to say this. I, as a youth pastor, want to get this information out to somebody else to help them so that they don't have to go through some of those difficult times as a parent making these decisions.
So we're with you. We're rooting for you. We're praying for you because, as we said at the top of the episode, I'm about to step into this myself. So
yes, you are.
Be praying for me. But that's a great conversation today. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about, is my child ready for dating? And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Check out wewere-thinking.org for more episodes, or drop us a note to info@wewere-thinking.org.